For years, the gospel world saw Travis Greene as a symbol of strength, a man who could command heaven with his worship and bring hope to millions through his voice. But behind that anointing, behind every powerful song and every tear-filled performance, was a silent battle he carried for years. The man who helped so many find faith was quietly fighting to hold onto his own. On stage, he looked unshakable, hands lifted, smile radiant, voice unbroken. But offstage, he was struggling with doubt, exhaustion, and pain that no one could see. The world saw the glory, but not the grind, the applause, but not the anxiety, the blessings, but not the burden. For a long time, Travis believed he had to keep his struggles hidden, that showing weakness would make people lose faith in him. But over time, the weight became too heavy. The man who once sang, "You made a way when our backs were against the wall," started wondering if God would make a way for him too. And then, in one brave moment, Travis Greene finally broke his silence. He opened up about the emotional and spiritual battles he'd faced, the loneliness, the pressure, and the feeling of being trapped inside an image of perfection. What he revealed shocked many but healed even more, because for the first time, people saw the man behind the ministry, the human behind the hymns. He admitted that faith isn't always easy, that even the most devoted believers have nights when they cry out in the dark, wondering if God still hears them. His honesty broke barriers in the gospel community. It reminded people that true worship isn't about being flawless. It's about being faithful when everything inside you wants to quit. As Travis shared his truth, his story became a mirror for thousands of others silently suffering behind smiles. Pastors, singers, and believers everywhere began to see that struggling doesn't make you less anointed, it makes you real. And through that realness, God's light shines brighter. When Travis returned to the stage after telling his story, something had changed. His songs weren't just melodies anymore, they were testimonies. Every lyric carried the weight of experience, every note echoed redemption. Every note echoed redemption. He told his audience, "God didn't call me because I'm perfect. He called me because I was broken enough to depend on him." Those words hit harder than any song could, because in that moment, everyone understood. The very thing that nearly destroyed him became the reason his ministry now carries power like never before. Travis Greene's story is more than a confession. It's a reminder that behind every strong believer is a storm they survived. And sometimes, the silence you break becomes the freedom someone else needs to find their voice again. It began quietly, with a confession that no one saw coming. When Travis Greene decided to speak from his heart, what he revealed sent shockwaves through the gospel world. Fans were stunned, church leaders divided, and the entire Christian community found itself asking one haunting question: how much pressure can one man carry before he finally breaks? What was meant to be a moment of truth turned into one of the most talked about and controversial moments of his entire career. But to understand why those words cut so deep, you have to go back to where it all started, long before the fame, the lights, or the music. Because Travis Greene's story doesn't begin in success, it begins in survival. When Travis was born, doctors declared him stillborn. His tiny, lifeless body was handed to his devastated mother. But in that unbearable moment of grief, she refused to give up. With tears in her eyes, she prayed over her son, calling on God to bring him back. And then, miraculously, he breathed. That single breath wasn't just a sign of life, it was a sign of purpose. From the very beginning, it was clear that this child was chosen, but no one could have imagined just how many times that divine protection would be tested again. At only 4 years old, tragedy struck once more. Travis accidentally fell from a 4-story building, a fall no one expected him to survive. Family members screamed, neighbors panicked, but somehow, against every possible odd, he survived again, this time with barely a scratch. His mother later said she knew angels surrounded her son that day. But even as a child, Travis began to sense that his life was different, that he had been spared for something greater. Yet being chosen never meant being free from struggle. Years later, another near-death experience tested his faith. A devastating car accident should have taken his life, but he walked away once again. Physically, he was unharmed, but spiritually, he was shaken. The same miracles that once filled him with gratitude now left him with questions. Why him? Why did God keep saving his life when others weren't as fortunate? Why did he survive so many times? These questions stayed with him for years, and they became the heart of his music. Songs filled with raw emotion, deep faith, and honesty that touched millions around the world. As his fame grew, so did the weight he carried. Travis Greene wasn't just a singer anymore. He was a pastor, a husband, a father, and a leader. Every new title brought new expectations. People looked at him as a symbol of strength, a man who had it all together, but behind the spotlight, he was wrestling with pressure that few could understand. The same stage that once gave him life began to drain him. The same faith that once felt light now felt heavy. He could lift others with his words but struggled to lift himself in silence. And then came the moment that changed everything. During one of his most recent live appearances, Travis spoke with a level of honesty that left the room completely still. His voice trembled as he admitted that the pressure of ministry had nearly broken him. He confessed that there were times he wanted to quit, times he questioned his own strength, and times he wondered if his calling was becoming too much to bear. He spoke about smiling through exhaustion, preaching through pain, and carrying the weight of people's expectations while silently asking God for help. That confession spread like wildfire online. Some called it one of the most powerful displays of vulnerability they'd ever seen, while others were shocked that someone of his stature would admit to such struggles. But regardless of opinion, one thing was clear: Travis had started a conversation that desperately needed to happen. In a world that expects faith leaders to always be strong, his honesty reminded everyone that even those who seem the strongest sometimes need saving too. Travis later explained that being called by God doesn't mean living a life free from struggle, it means learning to see purpose in the middle of it. Every time he faced death, every time he battled fear, he discovered that miracles aren't about escaping pain, they're about enduring it with faith intact. He said something that resonated deeply with fans everywhere. People celebrate the miracle, but they don't see the process. They don't see the pain that comes with purpose. That truth hit hard because it showed that behind every powerful testimony, there's a private fight that no one sees. Through it all, his family became his anchor. His wife Jackie and their children stood by him through the darkest moments. When he felt like giving up, they reminded him that he wasn't alone. They became his safe place, the reason he could confess without fear, the reason he could be honest without shame. For Travis, that honesty wasn't weakness, it was freedom. It was the realization that faith isn't about pretending you're okay, it's about admitting when you're not, and still choosing to believe anyway. What Travis Greene's confession truly did was tear down the illusion that faith leaders have to be perfect. It showed that miracles don't make you untouchable, they make you responsible for sharing the truth. His story became a reminder that God doesn't just work through polished people, He works through the broken, the weary, the ones who keep showing up even when it hurts. Travis's journey proved that being called doesn't mean you won't cry, that being chosen doesn't mean you won't question, and that faith doesn't mean you'll never fall, it means you'll keep standing no matter what. His life reminds us that sometimes the real miracle isn't in surviving the fall, it's in finding the strength to rise again. The pressure that almost broke him became the testimony that's now changing lives. Because when Travis asked, "How much pressure can one man carry before he breaks?" the answer wasn't defeat, it was revelation. Enough to prove that even broken vessels can still pour out purpose. In the end, his confession wasn't a scandal, it was a sermon, a message that the world needed to hear. That strength isn't the absence of struggle, it's a courage to be real in the middle of it. Maybe that's what the church and the world needs right now. Not perfection, but honesty. World needs right now. Not perfection, but honesty. Not idols, but humans. Because sometimes, the most anointed voice isn't the one that never falters. It's the one brave enough to say, "I'm still learning to breathe." From the very beginning, it felt like destiny had chosen Travis Greene. His life wasn't just a series of events, it was a sequence of miracles stitched together by divine purpose. Every brush with death only deepened his faith. Every scar became a reminder that he wasn't alive by accident. People started calling him the miracle child, and they weren't wrong. His story felt like a testimony written by God Himself. As he grew, it became obvious that Travis was born to do something extraordinary, not just to sing, but to change lives through every note he released into the world. By his early 20s, Travis Greene had become a name every gospel listener knew. His energy, his sound. Name every gospel listener knew. His energy, his sound, and his sincerity set him apart from everyone else in the industry. When his breakout single Intentional hit the airwaves in 2015, it didn't just climb the charts, it took over. The song became a declaration of faith, an anthem for anyone who believed that life's struggles could still serve a purpose. It was followed by Made a Way, a song so powerful that it crossed oceans. Churches from Atlanta to Lagos, from New York to Nairobi, lifted their voices to sing the same words that came from his heart. Travis wasn't just another gospel artist, he was a movement. His concerts felt more like worship experiences than performances. Crowds cried, prayed, and lifted their hands as if heaven itself had opened. He had a gift that few artists ever achieve, the ability to make people feel seen, understood, and inspired all at once. His authenticity became his signature. Unlike many who chased fame, Travis never seemed interested in impressing people. He wanted to reach them. He sang like someone who knew pain. He preached like someone who had been broken and rebuilt. He smiled like someone who had met grace face to face. Soon, invitations came pouring in: music festivals, global tours, award shows, interviews, and ministry global tours, award shows, interviews, and ministry events. His schedule was full, and so was his purpose. Yet while his fame skyrocketed, Travis was also quietly building something deeper: a church in Columbia, South Carolina, where he would pastor people week after week. He called it Forward City Church, and it quickly grew into a vibrant community of believers. But behind that growth, behind the bright lights, cameras, and full arenas, a storm was brewing, one that no one saw coming. During one Sunday service, what began as a typical sermon turned into a moment that would shake his congregation, and soon the entire gospel world. Travis stood behind the pulpit, his Bible open, his message flowing as usual. His voice was strong, steady, filled with conviction. The audience, strong, steady, filled with conviction. The audience hung on every word. But midway through his message, something shifted. His tone began to crack. His hands trembled slightly. His voice, the same one that had commanded arenas, suddenly wavered. The congregation thought he was just feeling the Spirit, that maybe emotion had taken over. But this wasn't the usual kind of emotion. This was something deeper, heavier, a man on the verge of breaking. For a few seconds he went silent. The room grew still. Then, with tears in his eyes, Travis began to speak words that no one expected to hear. He said, "Sometimes the strongest worship leaders are the ones fighting the hardest battles, and sometimes the people you look up to the most are barely holding on." His congregation looked stunned. Some began to cry. Others bowed their heads, realizing they were witnessing something sacred. A man laying down his armor in front of the very people he was called to lead. He went on to share that he had been struggling, not with faith, but with the weight of expectations, the constant pressure to be perfect, to always be the one with answers. "I've carried people's pain for so long," he said, "that I forgot what it means to rest. I forgot that God doesn't need me to be strong, He needs me to be honest." Those words echoed across the church, then across the internet. When the clip found its way online, the reaction was explosive. Within hours, the video had spread across every major platform. Fans couldn't believe what they were hearing. Not because it was scandalous, but because it was real. It wasn't the polished version of ministry people were used to seeing. It was raw truth from a man known for his calm and control. Some people called it the most authentic thing they'd ever seen from a gospel leader. Others whispered that it was risky, that revealing weakness could open doors for criticism. But to Travis, the confession wasn't weakness, it was freedom. He later explained that fame in the gospel world can be its own kind of cage. The world expects you to inspire, to lead, to pour out constantly, but no one stops to ask if your cup is empty. He admitted that he had reached a point of exhaustion so deep that even his worship began to feel like work. The pressure to perform, to always be joyful, to never falter, it was quietly crushing him. And that day, in front of his congregation, he chose to break the silence. As days passed, more of the story emerged. Those close to him revealed that he had been working non-stop, juggling church leadership, family responsibilities, touring, and personal challenges, all while keeping a smile for the cameras. Privately, he had been battling anxiety and burnout, unsure how to admit it without disappointing those who looked up to him. But when he finally spoke out, he found something unexpected: grace. The same grace he sang about for years suddenly felt more real than ever. Travis shared that he wasn't speaking out to gain sympathy. He was doing it to remind people that faith leaders are human too. "We've built this culture. People that faith leaders are human too. We've built this culture," he said, "where pastors and artists feel like they can't bleed in public." But even Jesus wept. If he could be honest in his pain, why can't we? Those words resonated deeply. Other gospel figures began echoing his message, admitting they too had felt the same invisible pressure. His vulnerability started a wave of honesty that spread far beyond his own church. But not everyone was supportive. Some critics accused him of being dramatic, saying he should have handled his struggles privately. Others questioned whether such openness could weaken his image as a leader. But Travis didn't flinch. He responded calmly, saying, "I don't need to protect my image, I need to protect my soul." That statement alone silenced many of his critics, because deep down, it carried the kind of truth that people couldn't ignore. As weeks went by, that moment in church began to look less like a breakdown and more like a breakthrough. Members of Forward City said the atmosphere changed. Services became more authentic, worship more heartfelt. People felt seen in their own pain, encouraged to be honest about what they were going through. The church grew, not just in size, but in depth. Travis began preaching about rest, about vulnerability, and about the importance of caring for one's spirit as much as one's ministry. He reminded his followers that even purpose-driven people need to pause, recharge, and let God heal them. In interviews that followed, he reflected on his journey and said, "I thought my strength was in pretending I was okay, but now I know my real strength is in admitting when I'm not." His honesty became a mirror for countless people who were silently struggling. Fans around the world began sharing their own testimonies online, how Travis's confession helped them realize that faith isn't about perfection, it's about perseverance, that you can doubt, cry, question, and still be chosen by God. His story reminded everyone that miracles aren't just about what you survive, but about what you become afterward. Behind the scenes, Travis leaned on his family more than ever. His wife Jackie, who had always stood by his side, became his source of balance and grounding. Friends say she encouraged him to slow down, to breathe again, to find the joy that had once made him fall in love with ministry. Together, they focused on their family, on simplicity, on rediscovering the beauty in small, quiet moments. Through it all, one thing became clear: Travis Greene's story wasn't one of defeat, it was one of divine rebuilding. Every tear, every confession, every stumble was part of a greater transformation. He began to see that his calling wasn't just to sing about faith, it was to live it even when hurt. And in doing so, he gave others permission to do the same. Today, when Travis takes the stage, there's something different about him. His voice carries the same power, but there's a new layer of peace beneath it. His words hit deeper because they come from a man who's walked through fire and come out refined. The same crowd that once looked to him for inspiration now looks to him for truth. Because in a world full of image and perfection, he chose honesty. And maybe that's what makes his journey so unforgettable. It's not just about the music, the awards, or the miracles. It's about the man who learned that even those chosen by God sometimes reach their breaking point. And that's okay, because grace doesn't a breaking point. And that's okay, because grace doesn't abandon you when you're broken. It meets you there. Travis Greene's life stands as a reminder that destiny doesn't protect you from pain, it gives your pain a purpose. Every fall, every failure gives your pain a purpose. Every fall, every failure, every tear becomes a chapter in the story God is still writing. And maybe that's why his confession resonated so deeply. Because in that moment of trembling honesty, he didn't just share his weakness, he shared a piece of all of us. In the end, his journey teaches one timeless truth: the real miracle isn't how many times you've been spared, it's how many times you've been restored. And for Travis Greene, restoration isn't just a testimony, it's a way of life. The room fell silent as the words were spoken. "I can't continue to act like this," he added quietly. "I have struggled for years without sharing my troubles with anyone. I have been worn out, overburdened, and occasionally shattered." The sanctuary was filled with gasps. She yelled, "Lord, help him!" Others started crying. Uncertain whether he was going to pass out, ushers hurried to the front. Travis went on to acknowledge that he had spent years pushing himself past his breaking point, preaching, recording, directing, and traveling constantly while concealing the physical and mental toll it was having on him. He said that he had fought worry at night, gotten out of bed in the morning, and endured innumerable days of masking his suffering with a grin. The man who had offered millions of people hope now acknowledged that he too was in dire need of hope. Witnesses said it was a weird scene. According to one churchgoer, "We believed he was unbeatable. It was like witnessing a superhero acknowledge his humanity when he said he was broken." Another explained the instantaneous shift in the room. What started out as a worship session evolved into a prayerful storm. People are pleading for their pastor and falling to their knees. The entire church seemed to be holding its breath. That's what a young man said. Within minutes, clips from the service were making the rounds. Posts with the phrase, "Pray for Travis Greene," flooded social media. Pastors are also human, and I was broken by this. Overnight, the videos received hundreds of thousands of views after becoming viral. However, the rumors grew as the tale did. According to some, Travis was dealing with a serious illness. Others murmured about church politics, worry, and financial difficulty. Some even implied that he was at odds with business insiders behind the scenes, who were expecting more of him than he could provide. According to family insiders, Travis had received several warnings to slow down. He was simultaneously raising his family, pastoring a burgeoning church, releasing new albums, and traveling across countries. Friends characterized him as a man who never refused, who thought that taking a break was a sign of weakness, and who persisted in pushing against his body's pleas for him to stop. The most absurd thing is that this wasn't the first time somebody had expressed concerns. He had already passed out in private, away from cameras, according to several sources, but they dismissed it as simply exhaustion. Now that he had come clean, the secret was out. The gospel community chime. Clean, the secret was out. The gospel community chimed in almost immediately. Leonard Tasha Cobbs posted, "Brother, you are loved. We appreciate you reminding us that we are also human. I'm sending you prayers for strength. Pastors carry so much," tweeted Jonathan McReynolds. "Let's pray for Travis and all the leaders." Kirk Franklin referred to it as an industry wake-up call. Here's the startling twist though, not everybody was on board. Some detractors claimed that a pastor's public display of weakness could undermine the trust of his followers. According to some, leaders are supposed to provide a powerful example rather than one that is weak. Social media was split in two by the discussion. While one side questions his leadership, the other side praises his honesty. There was more than one man in Travis Greene's confession. It turned into a reflection of the whole church community. How many pastors are enduring pressure in silence? How many gospel performers conceal their tears backstage while grinning on stage? The church has been calling for perfection for years. Leaders are supposed to be unflinching, unbreakable, and unaccountable. Travis, however, broke that illusion. His remarks made individuals face an unsettling reality. Pastors are people. They grow weary. They become nervous. Like everyone else, they bleed. Nevertheless, Travis might have done more than deliver a sermon by acknowledging his frailty. He allowed others to be honest as well. What follows next is now the most important question. Will Travis stop serving in the ministry? Will he withdraw from preaching, stop going on trips, or possibly leave his position as leader? Or will this admission spark a movement in which leaders value rest, honesty, and health? According to several insiders, he already has plans to reduce his schedule and prioritize his personal health and family. Others maintain that he is working on a new record that will chronicle his path of healing and devastation. In any case, the gospel community is keeping a close eye on Travis because his actions will create a strong precedent for other leaders who must fight the same secret fights. "Perhaps it was God's way of showing us that even the strongest need rest," remarked a church elder who knows Travis personally. "Even pastors require grace." Elder who knows Travis personally. Even pastors require grace. Fans agreed with that. Online comments were flooding in. "I have also been fighting depression in private. Travis gave me hope just now. Our leaders are under too much pressure. I appreciate your honesty. Perhaps I can confess my weakness if Travis Greene can." Something much more than one man's story was ignited by the confession. It started an honest movement. One thing is certain: as the dust settles, we will never forget what Travis Greene said. His openness has affected lives, rocked the industry, and made the church face difficult issues. But where this route leads is still unknown. Is he going to be stronger than ever, or will this be the moment that breaks him? Was this confession an act of bravery that would forever alter the gospel industry, or was it a symptom of collapse? You have to make a decision now. Since this story is far from over and the upcoming part could include the biggest twist of all, please share your comments.